Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. In the last part, we started off our journey here in the Battle Maison proper, taking care of both the singles and super singles challenge matches here. And now it's time for us to go after more of them. In specific, since we're going down the list, next up we're going to be tackling double battles. Now, I openly admit, I do double battles comparatively inefficiently to some people because I don't use a lot of abilities or moves that actively power up a doubles partner or the like, or swap abilities and all that. I effectively treat double battles here in the Battle Maison and in the Battle Tower in the case there's anything like that I can do with it, like it's just standard double battles in the main campaign, which works well enough, but there's definitely times where things get a little too close for comfort, if you know what I mean. So the rule with doubles here in the Battle Maison is that you can only bring in up to 4 Pokemon out of the total of 12 you can potentially bring in between your main party and the battle box. My best advice would be, A, make sure your types are both scattered with the attacks you can deal, but also the intake you can take. But also try to make sure you never throw out 2 Pokemon that have the same weakness, especially if that weakness happens to be ground, as one of the most common moves you'll see here in the Battle Maison in any circumstance is Earthquake. Because get this, it's absurd. You'll also see Focus Blast a good bit, Thunder Wave, Hypnosis. You'll see a lot of status ailments all the same, so honestly, it can go a long way to have a berry that can negate a status ailment, or other held items that you can get over at the reception lobby here at the Battle Maison itself to actively avoid or power yourself up in some cases. Plus, since your held item is restored at the end of every battle, there's some strategies I don't really like for main campaign that really shine here. For instance, using Fling with very heavy items, actively using an item up in battle in some form, and then actively having the ability that boosts your speed or things like that, can really shine here in ways they really can't in the campaign because of the more limited circumstances. Also, Trick Room. I've brought this move up several times throughout the LP, but if there's a place you really should have Trick Room around, even for emergencies, it's gonna be the Battle Maison, especially in doubles or triples. I do eventually put that on Mortis, but with my specific team setup, I need to be careful because if I use Trick Room while, say, Blaze is on stage and they've speed boosted themselves up to max, they're in trouble when it comes to moving quickly. But that said, something like Boomba or Dove can really benefit from that. I think overall, Mortis is the one that benefits the most from it, though. It's really here in the Battle Maison where my admitted mistake with raising Blaze the way I did on the Super Training really can come in to bite me in the ass in certain circumstances, as, for those that don't remember, I split Blaze's EVs 3 ways, speed and both attack stats. That works fine for a Torchic. However, even by the time that Blaze was a Combuskin, they're learning so many more physical moves than they are special, I really should have just gone full speed and physical. Now, admittedly, I could have used a reset bag to go out of the way to fix that, but at this point in the LP, I was so far in and getting kind of tired of things, so I just didn't really feel like putting in the effort in that regard. And even then, as I've already mentioned, because the Battle Maison took as long as it did in the recording process and playing through it, I was getting more and more exhausted as the footage I was recording was getting sparser and sparser the more and more I played. So even extending that process even more just really wasn't in it for me. As it is, for what I'm trying to get done here, the party I have is good enough to actively reach the 20th battle in the marathon of the basic challenges and the 50th in the super challenges. It gets tense and tight here, especially if the random trainers you fight along the way actively start throwing out legendaries, which I think in the standard setups usually happens around the 17th to 20th encounter. Meanwhile, I think it can happen in any encounter above the 30th in my memory from the gameplay in these super challenges. You usually don't see too many legendaries though. At most, say across the first 50 outside of the Battle Chatelaines themselves, you'll only see maybe 1 or 2 trainers that have them. And even then, how dangerous that gets to be depends on the format. By and large, I would say doubles is perhaps the most tense of the formats you can encounter here in the Battle Maison and in the game period, as there's enough strategy in what you throw out when with what move compared to even triples or singles that a single mistake can be a lot more costly. Meanwhile, in singles, you're more used to that gameplay style at that point to begin with, and in triples, you have enough more of a barrier because of the third Pokemon that it's not as threatening. Time for our battle against the Battle Chatelaine. Here she comes, Battle Chatelaine, Evelyn.
Welcome to the Battle Maison. My name's Evelyn. I'll try to serve you as a Battle Chatelaine like my sisters, so I'm the third of us four. My specialty is double battles. I guess, I've not been to Hoenn for a while, so I'm a bit more nervous than usual. Oh, please, I'm sorry, but please start the battle already.
I love her. So starting off, for me, Evelyn throws out her Primeape and Lumineon first. Her Primeape has Cross Chop, Stone Edge, Retaliate, and Earthquake with a jolly nature with maxed EVs in its physical attack and speed stats. It also notably has the Scope Lens for its item, which increases its crit hit rate, which can be very dangerous. The Lumineon, on the other hand, has Rain Dance, Surf, Ice Beam, and Silverwind with a timid nature and maxed EVs in its special attack and speed. It's also notably holding an Expert Belt, so any of its super effective moves are increased in power by 20%. Lumineon itself we haven't seen yet as a Pokemon, but just to talk about it as a Pokemon for weakness' sake for you doing this battle, Lumineon's a pure water type, so it is weak to grass and electric. Decently high speed, okay special defense, no super standout stats on its own. But having Swift Swim, Storm Drain, or Water Veil's abilities means if you throw out a Rain Dance, for instance, it gets a lot better. Not my go-to water type, especially from Gen 4, but if you find its pre-evolution along the way, you could do a hell of a lot worse. Next up, Evelyn sent out her Persian, which has Round, Fake Out, Power Gem, and Dark Pulse, and a timid nature, with maxed EVs in its special attack and speed. It's also notably holding a Life Orb, which, as I brought up last time, increases the damage it deals by 30% flat, at the cost of taking 10% of its own HP every time it does damage. Round is another move you'll see pretty commonly throughout the battles here at the Battle Maison, especially more towards the super rank challenges. Just to remind you what that does. If another Pokemon uses that move before you in the same set of turns, its power is increased to 120 rather than 60. Which means reliably, if the NPCs can use it regularly enough, so can you and do a lot of damage, but it also is more benefited by Pokemon that are generally slower or faster in the case you use Trick Room. That is actively a case where, say, using Trick Room with a max speed boosted Mega Blaziken can come in handy. Albeit, from memory, in that exact scenario, I don't think Blaziken can actually learn Round. I'm more using that as an example. Finally, Nita sends out her Pachirisu Volt Switch, U-Turn, Super Fang, and Light Screen with a jolly nature and maxed EVs in physical attack and speed, holding a Citrus Berry so you can recover its health to a pretty good chunk. Pachirisu is a pure electric type, so it's weak exclusively to ground. Runaway, Pickup, or Volt Absorb for its abilities. Largely, I think this one has Volt Absorb. Pachirisu is a Pikachu clone that doesn't have any super amazing stats, but you'd be surprised what you can get done with this in the case of certain Draco Meteor scenarios.
Oh, fair play. You're quite strong, aren't you? Now that I've seen how strong you are, I feel I shouldn't have held back. It's just that my elder sisters had asked me to take it a bit easy on new guests. The next time we battle, I'll try to be harder on you. Please continue to patronize the Battle Maison and to challenge me.
Yeah, that was a whole thing. I'm not big on watching Worlds at all, but even I've had to see the Pachirisu surviving a Draco Meteor scenario because it's just so incredible to see actively play out. So now that we've finished the standard doubles scenario here at the Battle Maison, it's time for us to tackle the super doubles, which this is especially where things start to take a while. A 1v1 in Pokemon can take some time depending on the type layout and all that, but it's pretty straightforward. Doubles, and especially triples, are where the battle lengths just start getting ridiculous. I think I had battles regularly take upwards of like 5-6 minutes just to get past one Pokemon in some cases even. It's also at this point I actively decided to teach Mortis Trick Room just to help me along the way. So at this point we've already cut past me doing all the doubles here. We're at rank 49. Let's take on Evelyn once again. Here she comes, Battle Chatelaine Evelyn.
Do you remember me? You don't, do you? Of course. I'm Evelyn. You truly are the Hoenn champion, aren't you, dear guest? I don't want to fight. You look too scary. I want to go home. Oh, I'm so sorry. My sister would go spare if she were to hear me saying such things now. Let's just have a battle, shall we? I'll do my best. Honest, I really will. You can just fight however you'd like.
Being the round 2 against the Chatelaines, she's going to be throwing out legendaries largely, and this fight can be rough, as she largely focuses on the Johto legendary beasts, as well as a Latios. Her Suicune has Icy Wind, Surf, Blizzard, and Protect with a timid nature and maxed EVs in special attack and speed, and it's holding a Lumberry. Thus, should any status ailments be actively inflicted on it, it'll just automatically cure them. Meanwhile, the Raikou has Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Shadow Ball, and Protect, and a timid nature as well, with also maxed EVs in special attack and speed. Her Raikou is notably holding an Air Bloom, which is an interesting consumable held item. While the Pokemon's holding it, they're treated as floating, thus they're actively immune to damaging ground-type moves and other effects like Earthquake. With that said, if the Pokemon holding it takes damage pretty much at all, the Air Balloon pops and they are then restored to the ground. Next up, she's thrown out her Entei, Sacred Fire, Iron Head, Stone Edge, and Protect, Adamant Nature, and maxed EVs in its HP and physical attack. It's also notably holding a Life Orb, so any attack it's gonna do are really gonna hurt. All 3 legendary beasts having Protect can be really annoying though, as the AI is decently good about reading whether or not you're probably going to hit it with a super effective move before using that, mostly because you only have so many options. So in a lot of cases, you might use, say, a powered-up Water-type move on like an Entei, and it'll just protect itself and prevent the damage. So you might want to think about delaying your moves against certain Pokemon like that for a turn, just to bait out the Protect, and thus hit them when they're actively more vulnerable. Also, like I mentioned, and as you can see, the power of a Slacking is not to be underestimated, especially with a Life Orb. And if I had some other ways to raise his stats, Boomba would just be ridiculous here. Evelyn's final Pokemon, like I mentioned, is a Latios. Calm Mind, Luster, Purge, Dragon Pulse, and Recover with a bold nature and maxed EVs and HP and defense. I don't think we've talked about Luster Purge as a move yet, let alone encountered it. I believe that does damage and has like a 1 in 2 shot of lowering the target's special defense, which can get real bad, as can Dragon Pulse. Her Latios is also notably holding a Lax Incense. So any moves targeting it have their accuracy reduced by about 5%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're using otherwise inaccurate moves like, say, the Blizzard or Thunders in the world, that 5% can really make a difference. Fire Emblem numbers, not quite, but don't take unnecessary risks. In the main campaigns, I tend to be of the mindset where I don't mind using the 70 accuracy moves just because their power is worth it. In the Battle Maison or against other players, I take that mindset quite a bit less handily, if only because there's a lot more ways for them to get around what I do than the AI usually will take advantage of. Evelyn is a noticeable difficulty increase in my opinion from Nita, but that's also because I'm just less accustomed to doubles. In general, I would say the further down the list you go in the categories here, the harder the Battle Chatelaine gets, with the exception of multis.
You're so strong and so scary. I can't take any more. Dear guest, I'm so sorry. I tried as hard as I could, but I'm so knackered. I'll keep trying harder, so please, you must challenge me in the double battles again.
Oh, we're not going to, because once I finish a category, I am not touching it again. Potentially ever in the case of the Battle Maison, because me covering this here is also me getting rid of it being in my X and Y LP in like a decade. Unless things change in that decade, in which case, future me? What happened? Who hurt you? And why was it probably past you? Because that sounds like something that he would do. He's an asshole. 2 monuments down, 3 to go, but we're going to take a break so we can actively start on to what I think is probably the hardest set here at the Battle Maison, both in terms of complexity and also just fight design. Triple battles, which we haven't even gotten to talk about yet in the LP period. Triple battles were introduced back in Gen 5 alongside rotation battles. They were both present in both versions if memory serves, but I want to say one version focused on one more than the other, but I might just be associating that with something else in the series, thinking about it. Rule-wise, this is actively the only battle type here at the Maison where you actively bring in 6 different Pokemon. And you keep going until the team's done. This is the other reason why the battles get longer as you go on, because you're effectively doing full-out Pokemon battles at this point. So the way that triple battles work in combat is you throw 3 Pokemon out at a time, as the name would suggest. However, it's at this point where the range that moves can hit actively comes way more into play. For instance, what moves might actively hit all opponents in a singles or doubles battle might only hit the Pokemon on the very left and center or very right and center, depending on the placement of the Pokemon actively using the move. With that said, if you want to use a super effective move on a Pokemon all the way across the stage, you're not out of luck, but you're definitely in some awkward situations. The main strategies around that are either doing a 2-turn swap, or using the shift button that's now on the bottom left of the bottom screen. For instance, say Blaze was on the far right side where Boomba is, and I wanted to hit the Shroomish with Blaze Kick, like I am right now. I could hit that while on Blaze's turn, and he'll shift over to the center, and Kenny will swap spaces with him. At that point, he can target the entire center field. With that said, the opposite's also true. The entire field could target him. As you whittle down a triple battle, it either will get much easier for you or much harder for you depending on how many Pokemon you've lost along the way, as the more Pokemon focusing on a single target there are, the riskier things get. Worth noting, whenever there's only 1 Pokemon left on either team, they automatically get put into the center of the field just so they can hit all Pokemon, but that also means, again, all Pokemon can hit them. I am torn between whether or not I prefer triples or rotation battles. I think rotation battles have more interesting ideas being played with, but they're ultimately less interesting battles to play, if only because of how they usually end up playing out. Triples, I think, are more tread upon ideas, but the positioning mattering that much more actively, I think, can be more interesting. With that said, both formats didn't survive past Gen 6. They were introduced in Gen 5, they were in Gen 6, and then they were dead. And honestly, I don't exactly miss them. I think when it comes to mechanical interest, this series plays best in singles, doubles, or multis, and I'm glad that they're the ones that have really stuck around. Heck, you could honestly make a decently solid argument that rotations and triples were the first time they really tried to implement a gimmick on a regional basis before Mega Evolutions that just didn't stick around that long. But it's a lot less important to the series than Megas even were, even as someone who's an admitted disliker of Megas in execution, if not in concept. There is some tricky stuff you can do with potentially swapping a Pokemon's positioning in battle, where it can cause certain moves either used by yourself or opponents to actively fail, I believe. But in most cases, that's just unpredictable enough where you really shouldn't rely on it as a strategy in any case unless you're going up against a buddy in specific and you know what moveset they might have. Going up against the random trainers in here, it's really not going to be worth your time, which kind of describes triples in general. In the meanwhile, while we fight this trainer before we go to the Battle Chatelaine, how are y'all doing? I'm doing fine. I chose this song specifically because Donkey Kong Bonanza's out and I'm about 8 hours in. That game's nuts. How did they make a Mario Odyssey game again? That's... what? I'll talk more about that whenever I eventually probably cover it in some form on the LP channel. I got a couple of other Donkey Kongs to get to first, more than likely, though. Alright, so now let's go fight the Battle Chatelaine for triple battles. Here she comes, Battle Chatelaine Donna. Donna, I'm saying Donna because of Ease 8, I will openly admit. Welcome to the Battle Maison. I'm Donna, thank you for coming. I'm the second eldest of the 4 sisters who run this Battle Maison. I'm also a triple battle expert. I have no use for an act like that here in Hoenn, have I? Everyone here knows my true self. Well, give us a battle then. I'll show you how it's done. So, in her first battle, Donna isn't the most threatening, but because of the team size, you're definitely in for a bit of an uphill battle. For me, starting off, she throws out her Piloswine, Magneton, and Dragalge. Her Piloswine has Blizzard, Thrash, Earthquake, and Hail with a bashful nature and maxed EVs in its physical attack and special attack. It's also notably holding a Persim Berry, so if it hits a Confusion status ailment, it'll heal itself. Thrash, I think in specific, is why it has that. The Magneton has Thunderbolt, Flash Cannon, Screech, and Metal Sound with a calm nature, and maxed EVs in physical defense and special defense. It's also notably holding a Shuka Berry, so if it gets hit by a super effective ground type attack, it cuts that damage in half. Her Dragalge has Waterfall, Facade, Double Team, and Poison Tail with an adamant nature, and its EVs are pumped fully into physical attack and speed. And notably, it's holding a Bright Powder, so any incoming attacks to that Pokemon have their accuracy lowered by about 10%. Dragalge itself, just to briefly talk about it, that is a Poison Dragon type from Gen 6, so it is weak to Ground, Psychic, Ice, and Dragon. Really high special defense natively. And its physical defense isn't anything bad either. It does lean more towards special attacking, and it is notably slow. Ability-wise, it allows her Poison Point, Poison Touch, or Adaptability. Next up, she's throwing out her Girafarig and her Whimsicott. Her Girafarig has Psychic, Thunderbolt, Energy Ball, and Dazzling Gleam with a modest nature, and all of its EVs are pumped into special attack and speed. It's also notably holding a Colbur Berry, which cuts the damage in half from Dark-type moves that it can intake. Meanwhile, the Whimsicott has Energy Ball, Moonblast, Leech Seed, and Tailwind with a modest nature, and EVs pumped into special attack and speed. It's also notably holding a Citrus Berry, so it can heal itself for a pretty good chunk when it hits below half health. I don't think it happens too much in the active Chatelaine fights, but worth noting, I did have some embarrassing moments pretty frequently in the main runs through the Battle Maison where every now and then I would come across a Pokemon that wasn't Fairy-type prior to Gen 6, and I would just forget it's a Fairy-type now, and waste a couple of turns trying to hit it with, say, Dragon-type moves on Kenny or things like that. And it's partially because, since I wasn't recording a lot of these matches, I wasn't paying as much attention as I probably should have been, especially in earlier fights in a win streak. So I would just kind of be talking with friends or watching anime with my partner and just almost losing battles that I really shouldn't have been. Worth noting, looking across the various Battle Chatelaines and their Pokemon that they actively have in their set battles, the things you're going to need to worry about the most are going to be generally speed from Pokemon, as they almost all have their Pokemon with speed EVs, followed up by either the attack stats. Most of the time, if they're boosting the defense stats of a Pokemon, it's either one that's relatively defensive as it is anyway, just to make it an even better tank, or something that has a really drastic weakness in that area. Donna's final Pokemon here is the Magcargo. Overheat, Earth Power, Gyro Ball, and Body Slam with a quiet nature, and its EVs pumped into attack and special attack. It's also notably holding a White Herb, where if any of the Pokemon stats get shifted down a stage or however, it consumes that and restores them back to normal. The main strategy there is to use Overheat at full power twice in a battle, which can be really devastating, especially against anything weak to fire, of course. But for my specific party, not the biggest threat. Oh, actually, you know what? Future Me probably already shouted this out, but I did get something wrong earlier in this set of triple battles. The Pokemon only gets automatically moved to the center if it's a 1v1. In the case of a 2 or 3v1, you can actually have a Pokemon all the way across the field from the other and keep it out of reach of certain potential threats. With that said, with what's going on here, this Whimsicott's not exactly in the best shape. In some cases like this, it actively is a little bit of a smarter strategy just to whittle down the HP with the Pokemon that actively can hit it and is out of range of the target, as that means any moves they have that could be really disadvantageous for the Pokemon in question could be really easy to avoid. Or in the case like what's going on here, for instance, I could have Blaze wait around maxing out their speed stat via speed boost, and then swap them in when it's going to be a guaranteed hit first before anything else happens. I do think part of the reason why triples just never really caught on compared to singles or doubles largely does come down to that they're interesting, but they are too much compared to a lot of other battles. Plus, I imagine there's probably some setups that just get so ridiculously granular where setting them up is either too tedious to be any kind of interesting, or fighting against them gets to be so annoying that it's really not worth the time to invest into it. Rotations in comparison are a lot more straightforward with that, which I do appreciate. Which again, I'll talk more about rotation battles again, which we've already really talked about them once so far, once we actively get to that chunk of the Battle Maison. I think this part? I genuinely don't remember if we do that this time or next time, because we do finish this off next time, I believe. I expected no less from the champion. You and your Pokemon are brilliant, aren't you? You've lit a fire in me heart, you have.
Oh, you're all right. Away you go and keep on winning. 'Cause if you do, I'll show you my real skills. You do well to mind yourself then.
At this point, that's what? 160 battles done out of the roughly 350 we need to do here. I'm only at about the halfway point. I don't think I show many of my save screens actively as we go through this, but if I could, you'd just see the time balloon more and more and more and more. So now it's time for us to head into Super Triples for the next 50 battles. I do believe I do several battles in a row here, but before we actually finish the area off, I want to head back to Slateport Market, as there's several TMs here I haven't picked up yet, and I think I want at least one of them for what's coming up here. In specific, I'm here for Thunderwave, as I would like to have a pretty quick paralysis to go off for certain things I know are upcoming. I put that on Dove in specific and bring her in for the final bout against Donna at round 50. Let's get right on into that, why don't we? Here she comes, Battle Chatelaine Donna.
Oh, I've been waiting for you, I have, champion. My Pokemon and I are burning up to face ye. Let's get on with it then.
This is perhaps the most brutal fight in the game in a lot of scenarios. Donna brings not only the entire Reggie trio, she brings the Cantonian Bird trio, meaning you're up against a lot of types and a lot of tanks. For what she throws out first here, her Regirock has Ice Punch, Rock Slide, Drain Punch, and Earthquake with an adamant nature, and all of its EVs pumped into HP and attack. It's also notably holding a Luminous Moss item, which, if it's hit by a Water-type damaging move, it consumes that, and its special defense is raised by 1 stage, making it an even better tank. The Registeel has Rock Polish, Earthquake, Iron Head, and Thunder Punch with a Jolly nature, and all of its EVs pumped into attack and speed, and it's also holding a King's Rock, so all of its moves have about I think it's like 10% chance flat to cause a flinch. Her Zapdos, on the other hand, has Thunder, Light Screen, Rain Dance, and Drill Peck with a naive nature, and all of its EVs pumped into special attack and speed, and it's holding a Patea Berry, which I think raises its special attack by a stage when it's below like 25% HP. The Zapdos' speed and knowing Rain Dance is something I knew ahead of time, and that's actually why I brought Kenny in with Sunny Day, so I could counter that and make it so that A, it can't use its Thunder with 100% accuracy, and B, I can do more damage, potentially causing things to go my way before things went really awry. From my memory of the footage, next up Donna's going to throw out her Regice and her Articuno. Her Regice has Thunder, Blizzard, Focus Blast, and Thunder Wave, and an Impish nature with max EVs and HP and special defense. It's also holding a Zoom Lens item, which boosts its accuracy by a flat 20% across the board, assuming the target has used a move before it in that turn. Meanwhile, the Articuno has Frost Breath, Reflect, Steel Wing, and U-Turn with a Jolly nature, and all of its EVs in attack and speed. It's also holding a Sharty Berry, which I think reduces the damage from a super effective Rock-type attack. The final Pokemon they're going to throw out, just because it's all that's going to be left, is the Moltres, Overheat, Air Slash, Tailwind, and Will-O-Wisp with a modest nature. All of its EVs are in special attack and speed. It's also holding a White Herb, so it's going to use Overheat, negate the stat loss, and then probably use it again. This fight is just, frankly, nasty. Not for nothing, the rotations Chatelaine 50-rounder can also be a bit of a rough fight, but I think in terms of just the pure ways things can go wrong in this fight, this is overall the worst one. Especially if Rain Dance sticks around, and especially if Zapdos and Regice are thrown out at the same time, because two 100% accurate Thunders outside of a ground type being around is gonna cause some problems fast. I might as well take this moment, though, to talk about something I think I talked about briefly last time, Trainer ID level. This was a thing that started back in Gen 3 in Ruby and Sapphire, and carried forward up to this point in the series, and then wasn't seen again until Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and hasn't been seen since. Effectively, as you do certain tasks throughout the game, your trainer ID gains stars and changes its color to showcase what you've done. Here in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and in X and Y, there are only 4 trainer ID levels. The standard one, bronze, silver, and gold. Here in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the events that cause your trainer ID to upgrade are beating the game, i.e. getting a record in the Hall of Fame, completing the Hoenn Pokédex, excluding Rayquaza, Jirachi, and Deoxys, which is kind of funny in retrospect, because the only one of those that's now an event legendary exclusively is Jirachi, and defeating a Battle Chatelaine at the 50th consecutive battle. So, in this LP, I get up to a silver ID, which from memory is in tone with what I did back in my Soul Silver LP. I think I also got up to the 3rd tier ID there because I didn't do 100 trainers in a row at the Battle Tower, which is just rough. And I definitely didn't complete the National Pokédex. Them making it just be the Hoenn Pokédex is honestly really kind because it's pretty easy to do that as long as you have a buddy to trade you the version exclusives and all that. There's a part of me that does miss this ID card level as a mechanic just to showcase what you've done in the game and how much time you've dedicated to it. But at the same time, given how the series really changes in minor and major ways in each entry moving forward in Gen 7 beyond, I get why they probably wanted to retire it. Especially considering, in some regards, there was also less to do in some ways that you would usually get trainer ID card levels from in future installments. Specifically more in Gen 8, but I'll talk more about that whenever I reach Sword and Shield. Probably Sword version, if I had to guess, because that's what I played when the game came out, but I might do Shield, who knows. It's gonna be really weird whenever I get to Gen 7 specifically, because the lack of a 3rd version or remake by that point means I need to actively choose a version to do, which is harder to do in that case than I would think it would be, thinking about it. Because I'm still not sure if I would do, like, Ultra or Original for Sun and Moon. There's a chance I might just do both versions of a version, so Moon and Ultra Moon or something like that, and just cover the differences somehow. I feel like saying that out loud has just made that potentially be one of the next LPs I put the most work into outside of something like this, and that kind of scares me in a way. Yeah, though, Donna's 50th rounder is easily one of the hardest Pokemon battles I think you can do, period. Getting to it's rough enough, and it's a time investment. Beating her is also really rough. As we can see even here, this got close. Do not mess around with the Battle Chatelaines. Whisht! To think I'd lose again. I wasn't holding back in the slightest. Don't I look a right fool for underestimating the power of the champion? But, it was really good fun, wasn't it? I've devoted my whole life to battling, and now at last I've got a purpose. I'm going to keep getting stronger. Then I'll surely beat you. So until I do, you'd better not lose now. In some regards, the fact that the Battle Maison is actively originally from effectively Pokemon France, and I'm giving most of the Chatelaines an Irish, Scottish, or Welsh-adjacent accent, is a little weird, but the way they write their dialogue in English definitely more implies that accent than some others. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 39, we're going to finish off our duties here at the Battle Maison before moving on to much more interesting and nowhere near as time investment-y pastures. See you guys then.